Every billionaire alive today has one thing in common. It's not intelligence, luck, or even hard work. They were born into the right era. Every 100 years or so, one resource takes over the world. Whoever controls. It controls everything from the governments, the banks, the future. And the people who understood what was happening early became the wealthiest humans our century had ever seen. 6 eras, 6 resources, and one question nobody has answered yet. Will you recognize the current one before the window closes? Imagine paying for land with a bag of pepper. That sounds insane. But in 15th century Europe, spices were more valuable than gold. Not because of flavor, because they preserved meat. In a world with no refrigerators, the ability to stop food from rotting was worth almost anything. The problem was that pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg only grew in Southeast Asia, modern-day Indonesia and India. Getting them to Europe meant crossing thousands of miles of ocean controlled by Arab traders charging enormous fees at every checkpoint. So European powers did something radical. They funded exploration to find their own routes. Portugal went around Africa. Spain sent Columbus west. The Dutch created the world's first publicly traded company, the Dutch East India Company, built entirely around controlling the spice trade. At its peak, it was worth $8 trillion in today's money, more than Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google combined. It had its own army, its own navy, its own laws. The merchants who invested early never had to work again. Neither did their children or their grandchildren. The lesson: the person who controls the route always gets richer than the person who grows the resource. Coal is dirty, heavy, and unglamorous. It also powered the greatest economic transformation in human history. Coal ran the steam engines. Steam engines built the railroads. Railroads connected entire continents. And the material holding everything together, the tracks, bridges, buildings, machines, was steel. Andrew Carnegie saw this before almost anyone. He arrived in America as a poor immigrant and made one observation that changed everything. The future belonged to steel. He built his first mill in 1872, and within 2 decades controlled most of American steel production. When J.P. Morgan bought Carnegie Steel in 1901, the price was $480 million, $17 billion in today's money. Carnegie became the richest private individual on earth. John Rockerfeller built a parallel empire, controlling 90% of all American oil refining. The U.S. government eventually broke his company apart by law. The first time in history a government decided one man had simply accumulated too much. The lesson: build the infrastructure everyone else depends on, and you collect value from every transaction that flows through it, forever. In 1901, a drilling team in Beaumont, Texas, hit something unexpected. Oil erupted from the ground with such force it shot 150 feet into the air and took 9 days to stop. The spindle-top gusher produced more oil in a single day than every other American well combined. Within a year, 500 oil companies had formed in Texas alone. Nobody fully understood yet what oil would become. Within 50 years, it was the most strategically important substance on Earth. It powered the ships and planes of 2 world wars. Every plastic product, every synthetic fabric, every fertilizer feeding the 20th century's population came from oil. Nations sitting on reserves went from irrelevant to untouchable in global politics almost overnight. The Texas oil dynasties, the Getty fortune, the Rockefeller extensions. These fortunes made the steel era look modest. Then in 1973, something shifted. Saudi Arabia and Arab oil nations cut supply to countries supporting Israel in the Yom Kippur War. Oil prices quadrupled overnight. Western economies collapsed into recession. Gasoline lines stretched for miles across American cities. The message was unmistakable. The countries with the oil had finally understood their leverage. Saudi Arabia nationalized its industry. Kuwait followed. Then Venezuela, Libya, Iran. The Gulf ruling families became among the wealthiest institutions in human history. Not by discovering oil, but by finally deciding to own what was already theirs. The lesson: know you hold something the world desperately needs, and being willing to act on that knowledge changes everything. For the first time in history, the new resource was invisible. You couldn't dig it up. You couldn't ship it. The resource of the technology era was human attention. Bill Gates didn't invent the computer. He licensed an operating system and positioned it so that every computer sold required his software. Every hardware maker, every business, every developer had to go through Microsoft. Jeff Bezos built a bookstore. Then he realized the real value was the distribution system underneath it. Amazon became the infrastructure layer of global commerce. the same way Carnegie steel became the infrastructure of industrial America. Google and Facebook went further. They realized that 2 billion people staring at a screen every day was worth more to advertisers than any physical commodity in history. The product wasn't the search engine or the social network. The product was the attention of the people using it. The technology era produced the wealthiest humans ever recorded. Musk, Bezos, Gates, Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Sergey Brin. Their fortunes exceeded anything the oil barons or steel magnates had accumulated. And the pattern held perfectly. The people who built the platforms others depended on captured everything. The lesson: build something other people build on top of, and you earn a percentage of everything they create, forever. Right now, the next era is being built in real time. AI is not magic. It is pattern recognition at an almost incomprehensible scale. Train on billions of documents and conversations until it can write, reason, create, and solve problems that previously required years of human expertise. The computing power required is staggering. Training a single AI model costs hundreds of millions of dollars. The companies building them, OpenAI, Google, Meta, and Anthropic, are accumulating resources and influence faster than any companies in history. NVIDIA, the company making the chips AI runs on, grew from $300 billion to over $3 trillion in market value in under 3 years. The fastest creation of corporate wealth ever recorded. Jensen Huang, NVIDIA's founder, didn't build AI. He built the infrastructure everyone building AI depends on. The Carnegie move. In every gold rush, the people who got rich weren't the miners. They were the ones selling the shovels. Goldman Sachs estimates 300 million jobs globally could be automated within this decade. McKinsey says AI will affect 70% of tasks in developed economies. The rules of this era are being written right now, in boardrooms, government offices, and research labs. The companies and countries that shape those rules will define who captures the wealth. Everyone else will live under the rules those people write. 5 eras, 5 resources, 1 pattern: spices, coal and steel, oil, data, intelligence. In every single era, the formula is identical. A new resource emerges that the world cannot function without. A small group of people, rarely more than a few dozen, understand what is happening before everyone else. They position themselves early before the rules harden and the doors close, and the wealth they accumulate lasts for generations. The window in every era is real, and it is always temporary. The spice window closed when nations monopolized the routes. The steel window closed when the technology standardized. The oil window closed when producing nations nationalized their reserves. The technology window is closing now as governments worldwide move to regulate platforms. The AI window is open. Nobody knows exactly how long it stays that way. But every era in this video followed the same pattern. The people who studied what was happening early got to shape what came next. The people who understood it late spent their lives working inside systems other people built. Every era produced its Carnegie, its Rockerfeller, its Gates. The next name hasn't been written yet. The question is simply whether you understand this era clearly enough and early enough to be part of what gets built, or whether you'll watch it happen and only understand it afterward. If this changed how you see history, share it. Watch the next video. Every billionaire from each era, what they owned, and exactly how they built it.